we'll let the rest of them who are coming come in as quickly as possible. But in the meantime, we'll just get started and try to get as much out of the time that we have as possible. So if I could have a volunteer to open us in a word of prayer, we'll get started. Please, thank you.
Dear Lord Jesus, we thank you for this time together. Lord, we come together yearning for your word. Lord, I pray that you open our hearts to know your will in our families, in our marriage. And may our home be glorifying to your name. Accept our praise and worship. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Thank you. We didn't get to finish the question, why get married? Why not just live together? So let's begin there, and then we have to actually delve into a couple of other things in relating to this question or in answering this question, and then when we get to 13, it should be clearer. Okay, so may I have your answers to why get married instead of other options as living together or not living together at all, or just having like casual friendships and casual lovers, all of that. So what did you have on your papers as answers to this question? Share with us.
Commitment.
Should I point to you?
It's a commitment in front of God.
Okay, so the reason why we need to get married is because we need a commitment in front of God, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And we need that? We can't just live together?
I think we need that.
Okay, all right. She thinks we need that, all right. Anybody else think we need that? Or something else?
Well, if you have a backup plan, it's easy to give up and then you don't have to pay the price.
Okay, and what do you mean by that? You have an exit strategy. Did you know what she was thinking when you got married?
Well, that's before we became Christian.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So, would you elaborate on that? What do you mean by that? If we're not
If it didn't
married.
work out, then we just break and then find somewhere else.
Okay. So if we get married, then the breakup is more formalized and tedious and too much work.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you're advocating don't break up. Okay. So you're saying the reason why we have to get married is because we need to make it as difficult as possible to break up.
Think twice.
All right. What else? Why do we need to get married instead of just living together or doing some other option?
Well, I guess it reminds you that you made the choice and that's God's anointment for you to be committed.
Okay. All right. Any other feedback?
I think get married means the two become one and they get union. So that's different from the live together. Because if they just live together, they still have two people.
Mm-hmm.
So that if you get married, they become one, and it means they can face face the further future difficult did everything together. So I think that's different.
Okay, okay. Is living together recognized by God as marriage? No. Would you support that?
Well, the law supports that.
The law doesn't recognize, does the law recognize two people living together as marriage?
There's some
Depends.
laws that, like, if you live together, like, for a certain time, and then the community or like recognize it, and it's like, in fact, it's a marriage.
Right, so the law of common law marriage, if you live together for a certain number of years, and that's different for, I think, different states. And I think in Maryland it's 3. I think it's 3 years. If you've been living together for 3 years, for all intents and purposes, they consider you married. Now I don't know how that affects everything else, you know, in terms of insurance or taxes or all of that kind of thing. But they will consider you to be married if you've been living together for I think 3 years. And so that's one way the state handles living together. Anything else concerning this?
Yeah, when you get into marriage, it's like an official announcement to all the people. You will receive the blessings. It's also a official occasion to declare you two get united together. Like when the people get baptized, it's a format. Like it declares the two people, but it declares the faith. Like if you have an official wedding, it declares those two become together from now on. It's like officially. I think it's very important.
So one of the factors is a public declaration. Is that what you're saying? That we are declaring it to the public that this is the.
And this format, I mean, build up. I don't know how to express very precisely, but it's a necessary format to announce these two are together.
Okay. Okay. Now, do we see that as an example in Genesis?
No.
Uh-huh. But who were the witnesses?
God.
And? That's it, right?
Yeah, that's it.
God's the only one who witnessed it, apart from the birds and the animals. Oh, look, they're getting married. What is that? We just live together. One buck was saying to its dog, "We just live together, and we don't get married like that." The people were being married, but the only witness was God, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the form of marriage, the only witness was God. So there were no other people, and this was, I mean, in actuality, it was a public wedding. It was an outside wedding, right? And it was a very, very simple and short wedding. But the commentary does say that the two will become one flesh. That's it. And since Adam and Eve didn't have parents, the commentary of verse 24 is actually talking about us. Because it says, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother. Adam didn't leave his father. Adam didn't leave his mother. And be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. The one flesh part we understand also from the mouth of Jesus, that it's a lifetime union and we can't break it up. Okay. So yes, the factor and the reality of marriage is it's supposed to be for life. That's it. Life. So living together does not highlight that. Living together has escape clauses. Living together is not recognized by God's sovereignty and His plan. So yes, living together is not the way that God has ordained marriage to be. So yes, we must get married if you two are going to do a couple of things. One of them is to have the pleasure of procreation, whether it ends up in procreation or not. And we'll get to that part too. Because we have to talk about all kinds of stuff, including oneness and what that means, and that requires that we also address the physical aspect of our relationship. Okay? All right, now, what I would like to do is actually answer this question, but we have to answer this in an aspect, including what we've been discussing so far. And it says, think about why you wanted to get married before this study. And are they the same reasons you want to get married now, if you are not married? All of you are already married. So then you would have to answer this question in terms of, or rearrange this question to say, were they the same reasons you got married then, and then did it change? So in other words, now that we've had the study about what Jesus wanted, or what God wanted in the marriage in the first place, and how He designed it in the first place, is that what you wanted when you got married? Is that why you got married? Okay? Yeah, this is the way I present it. Okay, some of you shook your head and said no, others of you, right? So you studied biblical marriage, and you said, this is what God wants, and this is how He wants it, so that's what I want, and that's why I want to get married. Is that how you got married?
No.
All right, nobody. Okay? Yeah, I didn't either. Okay? I didn't say, this is what God wants, this is biblical marriage, and that's why I want to get married, I'm looking for somebody. Okay? Because in actuality, when we studied this, what were the original intent for marriage? Oh, this is what God said. So, husband and wife are supposed to take care of the planet. They can't take care of the planet by themselves, so they need children. So I'm going to give them the ability to have children, raise children, and take over territory all over the world. Okay? So in actuality, every man was supposed to propose like this. Okay? You could choose any woman on the planet, right? Okay. After Adam and Eve, you can choose any woman. Right now, we can choose any woman, but according to the New Testament, we can only ask, of course, Christians, right? Because God does not want us to marry unbelievers. So we should have gone to the woman and said, nothing about our emotions, we love you, I love you, none of that. There was none of that in the original marriage, right? Go to the woman and say, I choose you to be my wife. God wants us to take care of the planet, and He wants us to have as many children as possible. So would you be the one to be my wife so we can have as many children as possible and take care of as many territory as possible, and we will live together doing that for the rest of our lives? Would you be the one?
You're freaking her out.
That's very scary. That's very scary.
That's exactly what God called us to do, according to our study, right? There was no, Eve, I love you. I got to know you, these 5 weeks or these 5 months were fantastic. I think you would make a wonderful wife, and we can live happily ever after, and whatever comes, comes.
I disagree.
You can.
Because when the Adam saw Eve, he was really happy.
Right, but they didn't get time to spend together to get to know each other.
But that implies that he loves her.
Well, okay, we're going to have to define love, and we will. Okay? All right. Now, we're moving toward the New Testament, okay? But what we see in the Old Testament, the way it is, we can't put stuff in there, right? We can't put stuff right now that we experience and what we know of the New Testament back in there and say, this is the way it should have been. What we are doing is just observing what happened and saying that this is the way it was. Okay? All right. There was not even a proposal. try to swallow that. Okay? So, what we're going to do is gain greater understanding as we go and find out what happened, and we're going to keep referencing that. We're going to keep going back, okay? So, wait, because there's a whole study going on. We only did the first one. Just, in how many weeks we only did the first one? It just testifies to the reality of the beauty and complexity of this thing called marriage, okay? So, if you would go to chapter 2, we're going to get into sin. Okay? Now, this is happening, or it happened. Adam and Eve got married. They're having a great time. They're getting to know each other now, right? What do you like? Oh, that looks good. Let's eat that. Oh, that looks pretty. Let's go spend time with that. And what did you call this animal, Adam? Oh, I call that animal a moose. Where'd you get the name moose? I don't know. It just occurred to me. What about that one? I called that one a giraffe. Giraffe? Oh, okay. So she gets introduced to all the animals. Adam is taking her on a tour. They're having a great time. They got urges now. What do you think about that? Ooh. Okay, so they go behind the curtains, and then they come back out, and they're still touring. All this stuff is happening. Okay? All right. Number 1. Chapter 2 study. Genesis 1 through 7. Okay, before that, let's have somebody read that. One in English and one in Chinese, because I want to be sensitive. Okay? So, would somebody read that in English for me? Please.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3, verse 1 through 7.
Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God actually say, 'You shall not eat of any tree in the garden?'" And the woman said to the serpent, "You may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. But God said, 'You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden. Neither shall you touch it, lest you die.' But the serpent said to the woman, 'You will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.' So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, he took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loose clothes."
Somebody read this in Chinese. I'm just going to enjoy the accent. Please.
耶和华神所造的，唯有蛇比田野一切的活物更狡猾。蛇对女人说：“神此是真说，不许你们吃园中所有树上的果子吗？”女人对蛇说：“园中树上的果子我们可以吃，唯有园当中那棵树上的果子，神曾说你们不可吃，也不可摸，免得你们死。”蛇对女人说：“你们不一定死，因为神知道你们吃的日子，眼睛就明亮了，你们便如神能知道善恶。”于是女人见那棵树的果子好做食物，也悦人的眼目，且是可喜爱的，能使人有智慧，就摘下果子来吃了，又给她丈夫，她丈夫也吃了。他们二人的眼睛就明亮了，才知道自己是赤身裸体，便拿无花果树的叶子为自己编做裙子。
In whatever language, the Word of God is just powerful. And this begins actually a sobering reality of a marriage that needs to be dealt with, but we understand this in such a cohesive way when we understand what God is doing in history. So what we're going to do is deal with the emotions of it, We're going to intellectually dive into this, but as we do, you'll see the reality of God's work in humanity and the emphasis that he makes as he declares and interacts with us in this institution of marriage. Okay? So, what kind of a question was the serpent asking in verse 1? What was he trying to do? So you should have, written all your responses to this so it's easier to respond quickly. So if I just point to you, you have an answer. Or if you didn't do your homework, you're just going to look away, so I don't. Right?
The serpent is trying to question God's validity.
Okay. What does he say?
Did God really say?
Ah, okay. Did God really say?
Force challenge of the women's marriage.
Okay.
Trying to provoke doubt.
He's
What?
trying to.
He also tried to trick Eve. Says, you must not eat from any tree in the garden.
Okay. Right. Let's deal with I wants to contribute. Let's deal with the first question that he asks, and that is, did God really say, oh, was he announcing he needs to eat? I said, no, don't take me. He said, I want to hear this. I want to know how I came to be. All right. So did God really say? So he's asking Eve a question, and even before that, we have to ask the question, why did he ask Eve instead of Adam? But we're going to postpone that. Hold on to that for a second, or maybe a couple more questions. And we're just going to address this. Did God really say? Okay. So he's trying to make Eve doubt. Was that a negative question or a positive question? Because we're putting intentions or motivations, we're assigning motivation to Satan by saying he's trying to cause Eve to doubt. Right? Okay. Can I innocently and righteously ask that question? Can we do that with one another? Did God really say that we need to be baptized after we become believers? Did God really say that we needed to celebrate communion? Did God really say that parents need to pray for their children?
It could.
But we can say that in a righteous way, right? Okay. But because we know from the current experience and all of the scriptures that Satan is a cunning schemer, that we're going to say he doesn't have good motives for asking the question. He wants to cause doubt in her, or at least challenge her in her understanding of God's word. Okay, so he wants to raise doubt. All right. How about number 2? How does Eve know what God said?
Through Adam.
Ah, okay. So the ladies are unanimous in saying that Adam. Okay. Gentlemen, dads, fathers, husbands, could God have told Eve this?
He could have.
No. No?
It's not recorded.
Okay. So God told Adam not to eat, and Eve was not born at the time. So we are left with the conclusion, which is an assumption, that Adam told her, and not God himself. Okay? So we'll see if that assumption is safe or not later. Okay? Alright. Then is what Eve said about what she couldn't do actually correct?
No.
Why?
Don't know. Maybe Adam didn't bother to say the right thing.
Okay. Let's talk about the statement first, and then we'll talk about the communication factor. All right. So, as far as we know, is what Eve declared actually correct?
No.
Okay. So, which part was not correct? Brother?
About which tree she could come.
Okay. So, what do you mean by that?
Like she says,
Be specific.
the tree that's in the midst of the garden.
Okay.
But then I guess it's the way you take what midst means.
Okay. So, in terms of accuracy, what was she not accurate about?
Where the tree actually was.
Okay. Where was the tree?
In the middle.
Okay, in the middle of the garden. All right. What else was she not accurate about?
And not touch.
Do not touch. So she wasn't accurate about the tree in its proximity, or not specific enough. And then the reality that she shouldn't touch it. Okay. So if the serpent was concerned about her accuracy, was he legitimately concerned?
No.
Why not? She just misrepresented the truth. She didn't get it right. So the fact that the devil, the serpent, let's just call him serpent as it is, before we find out that he was actually the devil, the serpent was legitimately correct in his concern of whether she was sure or not.
He didn't correct the wrong part.
Okay, but I'm saying, when he asked the question, did God really say you shouldn't eat? And caused her to, or challenged her to, whether she knew it or not. She confirmed his suspicion that she wasn't sure, that she wasn't accurate. Because we just said that she was not, right? She wasn't accurate. She wasn't accurate about the proximity. She wasn't accurate about the touching. And what wasn't she, or what else wasn't she accurate about? What was that? Death?
Yeah, eats the tree and
Okay, so she said if I touch it, I'll die, but God didn't say that. What else wasn't she accurate about?
Well, she said, we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden. Does that include everything?
Yeah. Well, she said the whole thing, and then she made the exception, right? She said, but there's an exception. And was she correct about the exception?
No.
Yes. She was?
No?
Why do you say yes and why do you say no?
Because according to her words here, says, oh, I lost it. Sorry.
So my
Says
version.
you shall not we may eat of the fruit of the tree